stuff with us. Does that answer your question, Ashley?
She's shaking her head, yes. And then
Great.
someone says, can you expand on residual compassion stress?
Yep. So that'll move me into the other boxes that are displayed. So residual compassion stress may not be a problem for us. But if you think about life today, every time you have a peer encounter, let me reframe it. When we encounter our peers, we're oftentimes hearing stories that are distressful, that are, we're hearing about the challenges people face in life. We're hearing about people's suffering and pain. We're hearing about people's struggles to get or retain recovery. We're hearing about struggles in families. So you think about hearing those stories, and I can hear one of those stories. We might be hearing about somebody's overdose. And I can hear one of those stories and walk away from that and do my normal processes for taking care of myself. And I'm experiencing some residual compassion stress because that story is disturbing in some way. But it's when I hear the story over and over and over. If you look at the box above residual compassion stress, it says prolonged exposure to suffering. So day after day, I'm going into an emergency room setting and I'm hearing people's stories of distress. We're hearing the stories that we understand because we can link to our own experiences. And so if you look underneath residual compassion stress, the box says traumatic memories. And for those of us doing peer recovery support services, this is such an important area for us to be in touch with. Because we have the leftover stress from those encounters we have, and sometimes we're hearing those stories again and again and again, and that may be tapping into our own memories of trauma. And so that residual compassion stress is one component that leads us to compassion fatigue, but the other components are that it's this prolonged experience, that it's the exposure again and again and again. And it's also that each of us brings something, that our own traumas, into these encounters. Though that trauma makes us effective because it helps us to build up our empathy. At the same time, that trauma can be brought back to the surface by the stories we're hearing. So I just want to stop again and ask if that answered the question, but also then if what other people, does this make sense, I guess, in general?
No one's responded in the chat box yet, but Henry has his hand raised. Is it okay if I unmute him?
You bet.
All right, Henry.
Hey, this is Henry Kowalczyk. So my question with compassion fatigue and what we're discussing is, would it ever be appropriate or necessary to maybe bring a somewhat fun or comedic, if you will, situation or exercise into the matter, just to lighten things up a little bit? And, I feel like if you're having a good time every once in a while, that would help slow the progression of compassion fatigue. Am I
Well,
right
I think,
in that?
Henry, that depends on the particular encounter and the individual. That some people might feel like an injection of humor when they're sharing their souls or they're really talking about their distress, might find that off-putting.
Right.
And plus, it could be, I think it's great to have that conversation about individual encounters with your supervisor or with the people you work with. Why are you using the humor? Is that to offset your own traumatic memories? Or is it really in service to the individual you're providing the service to? So I will not say that it's never appropriate to introduce humor. I think that sometimes it helps us to deal with life. And sometimes that's exactly what the peer needs. But I wouldn't want to see us use that every time we get uncomfortable. So I think that can be a place that we retreat to, or it can be something we actually do that really helps the person we're providing services to. Henry, does that answer your question? I don't want to give a blanket, yeah, just go ahead and make a joke.
Yeah, no, it definitely, excuse me, it definitely answers my question. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I think what's really great in providing peer services is to notice your dynamic of wanting to introduce humor and then to have a conversation afterwards about what's going on for you.
Right.
Then you sort of build on your own self-awareness of what's happening.
So I guess really assess the situation before bringing in some lighter, if you will, conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I can get to times in my life, Henry, where my own experience is that my knee-jerk reaction is to introduce humor because I'm uncomfortable.
Right.
And that might not be what the peer needs in that moment. Now, I have to look after the peer's needs as well as my own, but if I'm doing that all the time, it may lessen the impact of my peer service.
Well, that definitely.
Any other questions or comments?
Leroy has a question. I'll unmute him.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dwayne, for your help.
All right, Leroy.
Yeah, Owen, what you said, I'm sorry, I guess I need to put my picture up. What you said makes perfect sense. And one of the things that, and it'll be a question, is working in the Grady emergency room and having people come in from overdoses on a regular daily basis, and then seeing some of the same people having interaction with a peer that I actually visit with on a regular basis come in off a setback on many occasions. That's where that prolonged exposure really affects me, because I've formed, somewhat of a relationship with this person I've been visiting with, and sharing with, and seeing them come back time after time, I begin to question, am I being of any help? I mean, what's going on? So how would one deal with that when you're dealing with someone who's constantly having setback and having that exposure and trying to continue to show the compassion?
So Leroy, that's where I think it's really important for us to have the peer support, our own peer support network that provides us the place where we can process what's going on for us. And it sounds like to have some real good conversations in supervision about detachment, that healthy detachment, which means we don't turn our hearts off. We don't break away this empathic ability. But because I think that's sometimes what we observe in other professionals, that it seems like their empathic ability gets diminished over time. And we don't want that to happen to us. But we have to learn how to, in a healthy way, detach from that individual. It may sound sort of overly emotional, but in a loving way, and understand what's theirs and what's ours. So I can provide peer recovery support, but they own their recovery. How can I help them understand and enhance that ownership? Does that answer your question, Leroy? I mean, it's a simple answer right now, and we could probably spend a lot of time on it.
It answers it. Yes.
Good.
So
Now,
Owen, there's one more question in the chat box that I wanted you to say, because I think you're gonna get to it later. But
Okay.
Roderick Baker says, suppose you have the skill set of detachment, but work with others who may not have this skill set or don't recognize their fatigue or residual compassion stress. He says he believes this is about self-care, have a life of joy, and self-awareness in your support system.
Yeah, now who was that, Larry, again?
Roderick Baker.
So Roderick, can you hold, and Larry and Dwayne, just remind me to come back to that, because I think you're right. I think we'll talk somewhat about that, but it's a great question. It's really about how we provide support to each other. So I see that Alvin has his hand up. We do have to move on, but Alvin, I'm going to ask you to hold on to your question, and then you can process some of this in your small groups, and then we'll come back and see if we can come to it then. But I also want to talk about this other life demands, because that's the box we haven't mentioned yet. And I see Charles Hines has a hand raised. Hang on to your questions for this moment, and we'll make some space to answer them. So, other life demands. So right now, we're all facing a lot of other life demands. And I'm going to talk in some more detail about that. But in your small groups, as you break into the small groups, talk about, in addition to all this that's going on in peer recovery support world, what are your other life demands? And we can process that when you come back. So, Larry, are we at the place where we can break into small groups?
Yes, sir.
Good.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So I'm gonna put you in your rooms. You should see a button that say "Join the room." Join it. And at the end of, how long are you gonna give them?
Let's say 10 minutes.
So you'll have 10 minutes. At the end of the 10 minutes, there'll be a button that comes up and asks you to rejoin. Click the button and rejoin. If not, you'll be automatically rejoined a minute later. So wrap it up. All righty. Yeah.
And
Anything
so,
else, Owen?
what we're
Oh, and
gonna
we put
do-
the, I did re-put the diagram in the chat box again. Did everybody get it? Yes?
Yes?
All right.
Yes.
Anything
Okay.
else, Owen?
So you have that to refer to in your small groups. Talk about how this links with your experience. And then if you could ask one person in the small group to gather the questions people still have, to bring them back to us. And we'll come back to talk some more about this whole topic, but also about what your specific questions are.
Okay. I'm gonna put it in here again. There you go.
Paulo asks, what are we speaking about specifically?
How your personal experience, Paolo, links with this diagram, and what questions you still have. And if one person in the group could write down those questions. So rather than having 50 people answering questions, we can kind of gather them together. But specifically, does this make sense? How does it link with your experience in doing peer work?
All righty. Give me one moment. You should start getting into your groups. And hopefully, Owen, it doesn't take us into the groups.
Not in a group yet.
Well, if it does, we'll participate in the groups.
All right, everybody, join your groups. I see a few people who has not joined. Okay, great. Oh, so yeah. Tanya Welch, can you join the breakout room? Tawana Jackson, can you join the breakout room? If you're not gonna join the breakout room, I'm gonna have to remove you from the webinar. Let's see. So we got 10 minutes from 2:05. Right on?
Yeah. We're not going to get through this whole thing, but that's okay. That gives us some more stuff to talk about in a second webinar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think we might have some people who sort of signed in and then,
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get rid of them in just a minute. I'm writing the names down though.
Juana
in case-
Jackson and Kimberly West.
Is it Kimberly West or Welch? Oh, West. And then is it Nigel? Because I think he wasn't in one either. Because I want to have a list when they call me about it. All right, yeah. Gotta move to, yeah, I'm gonna have to remove them when we get back.
Is this making sense?
I heard of one.
Larry, is this making sense, do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. She was Tawana Jackson. Yeah, it's good.
Good.
It's good. And people are interested. And but what's really bothered me though is Owen, you see we only have 50 people and
you turned people away.
yes, well we got one just came in, I'm gonna let him in. But I'm gonna let her know. Hi, Ms. Malone. You're welcome to stay, but you won't be able to earn any CEUs. Can you turn on your video? I mean, turn on your audio? Unmute yourself, please. Hi, Ms. Malone, thank you for joining.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm at work, so I couldn't join at the time that you started.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay, but since you're 30 minutes late, over 30 minutes late, I can't give you the 1.5 CEUs. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I need the information.
Okay, I'm gonna put you in a breakout room just so you'll, well, let me see if I can. Put you in a breakout room so you can join the discussion. If I can, I cannot. So, okay. All right, well, you're welcome to stay and get the information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mhm. All right. Turn waiting. And you say Kimberly West. Remove. All right. I guess I put Dwayne in the room. Let me see where he at.
So how, are we close to the 10 minutes, Larry?
Yeah, no, that'll be 12:15. It's 12:09.
Okay.
Do you have the option to see the breakout rooms and join, or is it just me?
I think I do. Let me see.
If you wanted to, you can.
I'm trying to figure out how to bring up that.
Click breakout. Do you see breakout rooms at the bottom or no?
Here we go. Let's see. No, it's not at the bottom, but it says join breakout room. It says breakout room 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, you assigned me to a breakout room.
Oh, you just didn't
Breakout room
join.
2.
Yeah, because I was unsure what was the thing is I didn't want to have people who was not paying attention, and I wasn't sure about some of these phone numbers, whether they were going to be able to join if I did them manually, and I didn't want people to end up in there by themselves.
No, I got it. So, but
So I let the computer do it.
right. It's great. We'll see what happened. And then I think we're not going to have as much, the time that I had allocated in my head is going to go by, but we'll answer their questions. And then
Okay.
I'll move through some of the other material, but I'll make sure we get into the solution by about 12:30, 20 minutes to 1.
Okay.
Okay? So
Yeah.
that we really make sure that we give them some, what do you do about this?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I may not go through every single slide, but we'll get to the what do you do about this?
Okay.
And then we'll also get to, we'll give them the resource list, and we'll also give them the worksheet for them to work on their own.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to get some of these questions.
So Sandra, sorry you couldn't join us earlier. I'm Owen Doherty, and it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So you said this is important for you to have the information. Is there anything you want to share with us about why it's important?
Well, I am a CADC. I also am the resident manager for a 16-bed women's residential facility.
Wow.
So, and I work in the office, doing the other stuff during the day. So I have several different hats that I wear, and it has been my experience in the past when I didn't know how to deal with some of this stuff here. I didn't respond appropriately, I quit,
Yeah.
I threw in the towel, just different things. And as it goes along, I know the better my ability to deal with my feelings as they come, and the feelings of just sometimes being tired. My tired is tired,
Yeah.
To be able to do that, I can stay fresher, I can stay healthier for me, and of course for the women I work with.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That's really helpful for us to hear. It's too bad. The loss is to somebody else, who might have been benefited from your experience in one of the small groups, because I do think that you're not alone with that experience. It's something that I'm sure others share in.
Yeah, and I get to the places sometimes where, I know that some of the things that the women experience can be a trigger for me.
Yeah.
And so then I'm at the place where I sometimes get stuck in, like, I can be empathetic, but I don't know how to move past that because I've got my own stuff at that time, and it gets in the way of me helping them.
Well, you're coming in at the right moment, because we're going to talk about that. If you look at the screen, you can see it says other life demands.
Yeah.
Into providing peer recovery support or support to others with a whole bunch of other life demands. And that also impacts our ability to bring empathy and concern to the other. It diminishes our ability. So we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes, as we bring everything.
I'm about to close the rooms now, okay?
Thank you.
All right. There you go. They have 1 minute to come back.
They're coming.
I take care of myself. So we're going back. Thank you.
Marie, that was the fastest 10 minutes. That was not 10 minutes. I did not get
12:05 to 12:15.
a chance to share, Larissa.
Oh my goodness.
Well, there were a lot.
Who
I
is
know
it, Steve?
there were hardly anybody in our group. It took a minute before anybody came in our group.
We're all learning. I don't know, but I'm sorry that you didn't get to share, Steve.
No, you did a great job, Larry. I promise you. No, it wasn't.
Well, I gotta tell you, this time goes so fast. We're going to be out of an hour and a half before you know it. So, but Larry and I will talk towards the end. If there's enough interest, we can do a second one of these on the same topic in August. So,
Great.
so who wants to just talk about what happened in your small group and what kind of questions there were? And I'm going to ask you as we debrief this, if I've already responded to one of the questions on the topic that you came up in your small group, we'll ask you to move on to another question. So who has a question from one of the small groups?
Paulo, I'll unmute him right now.
Okay. Hi, Paulo.
Paulo.
Unmute yourself, Paulo.
Sorry, I did.
There we go.
Okay, never mind. Sorry. We had a good group. We had two main things that came out of it. One of them was the difference and what is it different to have that professional relationship with a peer versus a peer relationship? Because it is a professional job that we're doing. We're getting paid for it and all that, but we are supposed to kind of be from that point of a peer, in which sometimes you do share more, you bond more. From my perspective, and the one that I had was like how I think most of us can have learned to detach somehow. But when the things are overwhelming, and I think we're now in a point where it's overwhelming, like I've had overwhelming deaths in my clients. I've had suicide. It's just, I don't know how to do it when it's overwhelming, So those are the two main things that came out. I hope I didn't forget anything.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think that, so to me, and again, this is my theory, and these studies were done with people who are not providing peer services. I think that the layout here makes so much sense for us who do peer services, but that's part of what I'm exploring with all of you. I think the biggest differences for peers are that many of us have a heightened empathic ability. Many of us have a heightened concern for the suffering. And I think we're more susceptible because of our traumatic memories. So I think those are three areas where we have peers. It's like the boxes for peers are bigger than they are for other people, or the diagrams for peers in those three areas are probably a lot bigger. The other thing I've noticed, Paulo, and this is not just in Georgia, but in a number of different states, in our training, we don't do a lot of work around compassion satisfaction. So the more we remind ourselves of the satisfaction we get from the work we do, and I think we consciously have to make this box bigger. and there are some ways we do that. We've learned in recovery to do things like gratitude lists, many of us. But to actually, after encounters, to document our satisfaction in some way, or in our teams, to process the satisfaction we get from doing the work. And so to remind ourselves what we get out of that empathic encounter. And then I think that when it becomes so overwhelming, it's really a place where we need supervision. We need to have supervision, and we also need a strong support system ourselves. And those are two areas that we'll talk about towards the end. But I want to move on, and I hate to cut we could probably do an hour and a half on that topic, Paolo, but I hope we responded to your questions. Good. Anybody else? What kind of?
Yeah. Chris Sheffield here.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I'm Chris Sheffield. I'm a RCO in Thomasville, Georgia, recovery. And I just wanted to make a statement that I've been around as a substance abuse counselor for since about 2001. And this whole program here in Diagram has been really helpful just immediately because it gave my experience substance to where I really can identify with what I'm experiencing. You know, because for years we talked about burnout. And I hated that term because that term indicated to me that I was done, that something was over, but now I get an opportunity to give my experience arms and legs, and it appears to be for me now to be a roadmap back to that energized newcomer to the craft that wanted to save the world and had the energy to do it. So, you know, I'm really excited about the things that I'm seeing and reading here because for some time now, I've been experiencing much of this, but I couldn't put a name to any of it. But today I'm more aware of what I'm experiencing, and so thereby, I believe that gives me a roadmap to self-care, better self-care for me.
Yeah.
So, and that's really what it's all about for me. When I first saw this webinar being available, that's for me. I need that because I never thought of it in those terms, but that's what I've been experiencing and have been experiencing for quite some time. So I just like to thank all of you who are associated with the Georgia Council and CARES for giving me some insight into my life experience.
Wow. Well, thanks for saying that, Christopher. I want to move through the smaller groups and make sure we get to everybody's comments or questions, but I really appreciate your reflection, Christopher. That's very helpful for us to hear. Anybody else have some things to share from your small group? And if there are questions that came up, what were they?
Hey, Owen, can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, it says it's Tanya Welch, but it's actually Jean O. How are you, sir?
I know, I saw your picture. It's hard for me to see everybody and keep my eye on everyone, but I did see that your name was different from.
Yeah, Tanya's on the phone.
Okay.
And I just have to say, good to see you, but not good to see your Lemieux jersey in the background, being a Red Wings fan.
Well, this is my cousin's law office, so I have not.
Okay.
I have not fallen in love with the Penguins, but I get good internet reception here. So.
Okay. All right. So we had a great breakout room, very quick, but a couple of the items that came up, we were discussing how to not take home our compassion fatigue as we were talking about, and also how not to use the third hand, like if you're supporting a peer, and you're supporting them, who is supporting, you know, a peer through their trauma or whatever the incident may be. And one of the points was you can't change what we don't acknowledge, which I thought was really good. So if we don't recognize that, we have to be aware of what hat we're wearing, recognizing our own stressors. And of course, if we're not healthy, we can't help anyone else. But I thought we can't change what we don't acknowledge, so that I'm making sure, I interpreted that as to make sure I'm not putting my stuff onto the next person. But I'm owning it and taking care and recognizing it, but not adding to that. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about compassion satisfaction. I had a team member who was supporting an individual who was had suicide ideation, and she said, I was checking in with my team member after, and she said, I really, this is why I do what I do. I needed this, this, you know, so thanks, Owen.
Yeah, and I think,
and I hope I did the team okay.
I think that it's so important to really make that box bigger, because so often we get caught up in the quote unquote the problem that we're working with instead, and we forget what brings us to the work to begin with, and do conscious things. Now, I have some ideas that we'll share towards the end of the webinar, which is going to be here in less time than we think, but who else? Thank you for your contributions, Jean. And I agree with you that this is why we do what we do, is so critical. Al, you had something before we broke off, but is it still pertinent, or can you share what happened in your group?
No, it was the peer versus professional question that Paolo brought up, because I've seen, you know, that line. Before I was here at our hospital, I was a chaplain resident for a year. And so I always had to, even when I tried, it was hard not to take some of that stuff home. And I've started taking a shower when I get home. I think that can be a grounding thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Al. Anybody else from the small groups? Because I have more material. I'll move on. So we talked about this residual compassion stress. It's also referred to in this field, in this topic area, as secondary traumatic stress. And this is very real for those of us doing peer services. We become traumatized not by directly experiencing a traumatic event, but by hearing about traumatic events experienced by others. And that's that residual compassion stress. So we leave those stories carrying something with us. Its indirect exposure to trauma may occur in the context of a family, of a social encounter, or professional relationship. The negative effects of secondary exposure to traumatic events are the same as those of primary exposure and can include intrusive imagery, avoidance of reminders and cues, hyperarousal, distressing emotions, and functional impairment. So, intrusive imagery, things come back to us in our dreams, or when we are daydreaming. Avoidance of reminders and cues that may or may not be conscious. Hyperarousal is perhaps we get easily angered, or that we engage in inappropriate kinds of humor, but it's something, some emotional response is above and beyond for us. Or we might be experiencing distressing emotions, and even our ability to do the work we do becomes impaired. In the most severe instances, where symptoms result in significant distress or impairment in functioning, secondary traumatic stress may warrant a diagnosis even of post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is very serious stuff, and it can become so serious that those of us providing the peer service suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, that we walk away from these encounters. So it's really important that we learn ways to manage this secondary traumatic stress or residual compassion stress. I do want to talk about other life demands. And I want to spend a couple moments just inviting one or two comments about the about secondary life demands. So I've put up here that, I mean, generally, we might have secondary life demands that come out of our family situation, come out of individual financial stressors. But right now, as a culture, as a nation, we have a whole bunch of other life demands and other areas that are creating stress for us. And so some of those can be just, you know, I'm 68 years old and have heart conditions and type 2 diabetes. So just the reality of being concerned about my health, not that I am careless, but that I could get this, I could get the COVID, somehow I lost my.
Just reshare your screen.
Yeah. There we go. Do you got it? Oh.
No. Catherine, we are, wait a minute. Catherine, please stop sharing your screen. Let me see if I can change it. Oh, that might make all of this. Catherine.
She's in the waiting room.
Let me just remove her.
Got it.
All right, there you go.
Yeah. So any comments about the other life demands that you folks are facing right now?
I got, Roderick has his hand open. Let me see if he wants to speak. Roderick, please unmute yourself. Roderick, did you have a question or comment? All righty.
I think Henry has his hand raised.
Yeah, Henry.
Yeah, as far as I just had a comment. Right now with all this COVID stuff going on, and I'm mainly watching what my generation and younger are doing for the most part, with no social distancing, not listening to CDC, all that. I have to constantly remind myself that I can't control the other people's actions. And so that definitely plays into patience. And you know, I haven't worked professionally as a CPS yet, but from my training, I know that being a CPS is very patience trying. So yeah, right now I just got to remind myself that I can't control the universe, which is somewhat frustrating from time to time.
Thanks for sharing that, Henry. Anybody else? I mean, the other thing is that there's so much going on right now in our world. I live in very rural Western Pennsylvania, you know, but there was recently a protest here in this little county I live in, and I had to go, you know? So even with the health concerns I have, I just couldn't not go to that protest. So I guess, especially if it'd be helpful to hear from some of you participants who are people of color, just our current situation around the injustice we're exposed to in a very condensed way right now, and how is this impacting other people?
Well, I would like to share, Owen. Owen, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Alexia.
You know, I shared in my group that I really had to turn off the TV because the video over and over again was, you know, some moments I was angry, some moments I was extremely sad. And then having to listen to, you know, the opinions of others, and then it's all on Facebook and, you know, this, that, and the other. And for me, it just brought up trauma from the past.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, you know, I had to deal with what's going on now, but then I remember when.
Right.
And so I really have to be really careful about how I think about it, how I reframe it in my heart, because it is a matter of the heart. And one of the things, last night we had a recovery dance class, and it was so good. And the woman, Elizabeth Omilani, who is, her father is Hosea Williams, a civil rights activist. She's the one that brought me into recovery. And she showed up last night, and just seeing her face, for me, it just brought everything back, and I had my synergy back, and we were able to share in movement some of the things that we were feeling and kind of come back to a place of alignment. On top of, you know, wondering if people who are coming into the RCO have COVID, and I have an 80-year-old mom that I see about every day, and, you know, on top of all of that, and pulling all that. And then I have a daughter that's young, and, you know, her fiance, who is an African-American brother, you know, and it goes on and on and on and on. And so to find that healthy place, it has been quite difficult, but I will say that it's possible. And as a result of that, you know, thinking more about how healing from that generational trauma and healing from what we see now, how important that is on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, that's where I am. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to kind of think about that and kind of reconsider and make it a part of my lifestyle.
So I kind of love what you're sharing, Alexia, because one of the things you just shared, I heard you sharing about, was your compassion satisfaction. You know, that in the work you do, you're attending to the satisfaction you receive from those compassionate encounters. And you're balancing the traumatic memories that I hear are coming up for you with some kinds of hope for the future, and the memories of healing that you've experienced over time too. So I really just thank you so much for sharing all that. I really appreciate what you've shared with us. You kind of showed us how this works. You know, if we're heightening compassion satisfaction, we have to pay attention to it.
Owen, I got a comment from Teresa that says, could we refrain from saying people of color? We could use African American instead.
Okay, sure. Thank you for that. Thank you for that corrective. Do we have any other hands up?
Yeah, it's Chris Sheffield here.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. Well, I like to, you asked to make comments. These times are stressful, unquestionably, and there are a number of things that are occurring on both sides that I don't agree with. Some of the rhetoric, as well as the life philosophies of individuals and things of that nature. However, one of the things that these times have allowed me to cultivate even more is my personal and professional respect for other people's journeys, for other people's opinions. And even if I don't agree with your decision, then I can respect it because it's your decision. And once again, prompting myself to model what I believe is not a individual group's best view or perspective, but a universal perspective that works for all. Respecting the man who thinks the way he thinks, or a woman that thinks the way she thinks, and allow them to have their platform if necessary. And but to just respect that, and that's kept me centered, because I give people their just due in regards to how they want to run their lives, because it's their lives, it's not mine. Kind of like it's your recovery, not my recovery. Here's my suggestions. I'm here to assist if you desire. However, the choice is yours. The choice is exclusively yours. And because I've taken that approach to everything that's going on around us now, it's centered me, and I found balance in that way.
Thank you, Christopher. We can take like maybe one more comment, and then I do want to move ahead because I want to get us, we only have about 17 minutes left, and I want to get us to this, to some closure stuff before we finish. But one or two more.
Charles Hines, he had his hand up a while. Let me unmute him.
Yeah, Charles, thank you.
Charles, unmute yourself. I can't seem to do so. I sent you an ask to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm Charles, and I was just listening at the conversation, and one thing that I'm happy to say is I've been around long enough to see the world change, and what's going on now has gone on time and time before in this world. To see change, I've had an opportunity to express my opinion with large groups on different subjects and situations, and I see the effect it's having on people. One thing I've learned is important to find peace in the midst of the storm, because what's going on now has gone on before. What's going on now will go on again in this world, and people do need help sometimes adjusting to it because of the fact that it has a mental impact on a lot of people, on all people really, depending on the income, outcomes, and certain races of people maybe more than others. But the fact is, I realized so much Chris said, everybody has their own opinions, and you know, we have to respect it. Their opinions came from somewhere or somebody. But the thing is, we live in a world that's full of opinions and full of change. So I just say, like Chris said, you got to respect what's going on in this world. But the fact is, we need to try and change some things. We need to be acceptable to change. That's the way I feel about things.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to move ahead, and I hate to cut off a rich conversation, but I'm also aware of time limitations. So Chris Sheffield mentioned earlier burnout, and I just want to point out that what we're talking about here is not necessarily burnout. The World Health Organization does define burnout as chronic work-related stress. And the symptoms of burnout are lack of motivation, energy depletion or exhaustion, reduced efficiency, and it may be the result of unresolved secondary traumatic stress or compassion fatigue. So if we don't address compassion fatigue and the secondary traumatic stress that we encounter in doing the work we do, we could be led to burnout. And burnout may not be reversible. And so I think Chris Sheffield, we sort of touched on this earlier, but if we don't want to burn out, we have to pay attention to this stuff as we go along. And I want to talk about some of the ways that we can pay attention to it as we go along. So what do we do about it? I think that we've talked for years, you know, and I think even in the CARES Academy that most, if not all of you have been through, we talk about self-care. But I want to look at the importance of self-care through 4 different lenses. And I don't think it's just about, I want to, you know, ride my bike more. That may be one of the things that's going to help you with your self-care. It could also be one of the things, it could also become just another burdensome thing. If I'm feeling a lot of secondary traumatic stress and I layer onto myself the need to bike ride every day, which means I have to go fill the tires with air and do 10 more things, it can just be 10 more things on my to-do list, adding a lot more stress. But I'd like us to think about self-care in a different way. I'd like us today to just think about reflecting for yourself on your systems of support. What are your support systems and how do they work for you? We already talked a little bit about compassion satisfaction, but how do you celebrate your compassion satisfaction on a regular basis? How do you acknowledge and celebrate compassion satisfaction? How are you at healthy detachment? And if this is an area where you need some support, you notice it's right opposite systems of support. So we need systems of support to help us, I believe, in healthy detachment. And then I think the other area is sort of the traditional self-awareness. Some of us are more naturally self-aware. Many of us build our self-awareness throughout our recovery. And so what are you doing to build self-awareness? And so I have a worksheet that I'm going to send out to everybody. And I'm going to ask you not to take the time to do it now, but to spend some time looking at the suggestions on that worksheet and thinking about, is any one of these, are there 1 or 2 areas here that might help me in my self-care? Do I need to really focus on my systems of support? And they may be family, they may be coworkers, they may be team members, they may be the CARES helpline that Georgia Council runs. But where's your system of support? And how are you using that? And is there opportunity to maybe build up some more use of a system of support? I really ask each of you to reflect on compassion satisfaction and the place it plays in your providing the services you provide. I think that for me, my direct peer support was primarily through 12-step programming, but where I was really doing peer support was in the supervision and management I did at Georgia Council. And I needed to constantly remind myself of why I did the work I did, because it could become very draining at times. And then the need to maintain some kind of healthy detachment. One of the things on the worksheet that I'm going to send out is creating transition rituals between work and the rest of life. And I think somebody shared during this conversation, you know, that they take a shower to ground themselves. But I think to think through, how do you transition from work to the rest of your life? And are there rituals? And it can be harder, you know, since so many of us are working at home. My friend Joseph Sanchez, Hogan Sanchez at Faces and Voices of Recovery, talks about the fact that he closes his laptop at the end of his workday. You know, that actually has become a transition ritual for him. But if we're working with pajama pants on or sweatpants and a decent top, we may not be changing at the end of our workday. So what are your transition rituals? Or do you need some transition rituals? And then also to think about these other, that is a way of doing healthy detachment from your work life. I think that the need for solid supervision or team support is really a big deal in providing peer recovery support services. So how do I find team support to really help me identify and uphold compassion satisfaction? So I know we only have about 7 or 8 minutes left. I want to allow one more time for some final questions or comments. And then if we could look to people who haven't had an opportunity to ask a question or make a comment yet, and give them priority in making asking questions or comments. And then Larry, I'm going to ask you to send out both the wellness plan handout and the compassion fatigue resource list before we close up.
Okay, I just did it. They're both there.
And then Larry is also going to send out a link to a little survey we're asking. If you're interested in another webinar on this topic, please fill out that survey. It'll help us to really direct the survey in a particular direction. But do we have any hands up?
We got one from Roderick Baker. Roderick, you can unmute yourself now.
Roderick?
I just want to thank you for this very creative, innovative program. I had no idea I was going to get so much out of this. And I like the fact that you raised the question about what's going on in the world around us, how that would impact us, because I'm in a place where I have a spiritual solution and I still have hope. As far as being connected, I have a sponsor. My pathway is the 12 steps. And we have a group, a men's group that meet twice a month. That's not AA, NA. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about, and whatever we see in that group stays in that group. And then I have one-on-one conversations with my sponsor. And that's been very, very helpful in helping me deal with the stress of what's going on in the world, the stress of the job, all of that. And I just really want to applaud you for this presentation and for your acknowledgement of how you think it's impacting us. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Roderick. I appreciate that. Any other final comments or questions?
We got one from Jimmy. Jimmy, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, Mr. Owen, thank you for the presentation. And I too, you posed a question about other demands earlier, and I'm a U.S. disabled veteran that works at the VA Medical Center here in Hampton, Virginia. and I work in the PTSD clinic.
Wow.
Here in the clinic, and I work with veterans as far back as the Vietnam War and to those that's coming home now. I'm also former law enforcement, and I'm from that little country town in Johnston County, and so growing up, I had those issues that everybody's talking about. So I have a lot of mixed emotions at times, but with the diagram that you gave us, I identify with everything that went on in that diagram, along with what's going on within our society today. You know, looking through another lens compared to what some may be looking through. I can pick, but it doesn't solve anything. And I applaud the young generation for what they're doing. The younger generation, you know, you're gonna have those to agree, and you're gonna have those that disagree. So, you know, I'm too like Mr. Baker there. The 12 steps is my pathway. It took the 12 steps to find out for me that I was sick with a mental condition that I had been running from for years, didn't know it.
Wow.
But my whole point is that the title of the training that you guys have that you sent out from Georgia was attracted me to it because compassion is something that we as peers, we have to have. If you don't have any kind of compassion, why are you in this field? You know, and to now understand the compassion fatigue and the detachment and all that. I share with my group that how I take and release sometime and disengage is that I have a 16-month-old queen that runs around my house that gets me out of myself, you know, at times, and she helps me. And when she's at home with her mom, we FaceTime, and seeing her play with the phone, that gets me outside of myself for a minute, you know. So that helps me a lot of times. And knowing that she hasn't been touched by this world yet, you know. Yeah. So right now that's working. So I'm grateful for the training. I'm grateful for the training, but that won't be always working. So I know I've got to continue my recovery. You know, I got to continue working, man. So I'm grateful for you in the training. I'm grateful for the Georgia Care for allowing me to get this training. And I just wanted to share that with you guys, because coming from where I came from and to be a Black man in law enforcement and to see and have friends that I have that are Caucasian, and we have conversations. They can't have that real conversation with me about the real issue. It's always about, well, why are they looting? Why are they destroying? But the real issue is that the gentleman was killed.
That's right.
We circumvent everything else, but to have a real conversation, it ain't, I mean, we friends. We can go back and, I mean, we came up, we drank from the same water hole, you know, we jumped in the same creek together, but to truly talk about the real nature of what it is, because you don't want to be touched, it's uncomfortable. And I think that's what a lot of this stuff is about, because people are very uncomfortable to really address the real issue. So no one's mad about any of it. We get angry, but we must move forward. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. And it does, it peaks and valleys, but I must move forward, because this is a calling that I have. All that stuff I went through for a purpose. And that was to be here with you guys today. Thanks for letting me share that with y'all.
Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate your share. Larry, did you have anything? Larry, you were going to send a survey out. If you want to do a follow-up to this, just please answer that survey and give us an idea of, if you want a part 2 on compassion fatigue, let us know what else you'd like more information about. And
Oh,
we
and can I share real quick?
Sure.
I remember one time I was in an organization. It was a nonprofit. It was for women in recovery back in the 90s. And I got my sobriety there, and then I started working there. And one day, I don't know what happened. And now I know what happened. I got burnt out. And I looked at the I looked at the leader and I said, you know, what happens when you just don't feel like doing this no more? You know, and her answer was, you know, just get with Jesus and everything will be all right. And so I looked at her, and I had a book in my hand that had all the information about the organization. And I slid that book underneath that chair. I got my keys, I got in my car, and I left. And I never looked back.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, I was so burnt out, I couldn't do it anymore. I just could not do that, not another second. And I didn't use or anything like that, but I didn't even look in the rearview mirror leaving. I was just burnt out. And I don't ever want to get to that point ever again in my life. So this right here just brings me back to how I got through that and how I never, ever want to be there again.
Yeah, so I think that's the problem with burnout. It really does lead us to a place where we very well may not be able to keep doing the work. So it's great that we're glad, Alexia, that you came back in a different way. One of the things we're going to ask you to do, if you are interested in a second compassion fatigue, we'll ask you to complete this professional quality of life measure. And that really helps you to look at where you're at with compassion fatigue, and you just follow the directions, but it also gives you the ability to complete the self-score one if you complete it. But also, if you have any questions, you can contact me directly or get in touch with Laurie. That professional quality of life measure looks at compassion satisfaction, burnout, secondary traumatic stress in your life, and it's really a helpful tool that can help you to look at how all that's working for you. So thanks again. Laurie, did you have anything closing on this before we break up?
Hi, only thing I want to remind you guys is this webinar is worth 1.5 CEUs. I do not send out certificates for webinars, so please just make a note of what you attend, you know, which webinars you attend and what the day and the topic was and who the facilitator was. Also, some people are saying they're not able to access the survey. I put my email address in the chat box. If you can't access it, email me and I'll get it to you, okay? And it's Laurie@gasubstanceabuse.org. And you can also email Dwayne, and his is the same, except instead of Laurie, you put Dwayne@gasubstanceabuse.org. I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to specifically say thank you to Owen. I'm getting a lot of comments about how great this was and how it's really needed. And we really appreciate you being a service here at the Georgia Council to the CARES, which you are CARES. So
I was in CARES too.
So we're looking forward to seeing you for part 2, if so says everyone else. Thank you guys for coming.
Great, thanks.
CARES 13.
It's good to see you.
You had to do it, Gene. All right, thanks guys.
John. Thanks, guys.
And I just sent everybody my email as well. So hopefully I get to hear from some of you.
All right, wonderful.
Great, thank you all.
I'll leave it open for a minute for those who are trying to access the survey, but only for a couple of minutes, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so if you want to go, just hit leave. Top right button on your screen.
Oh, that was in the chat. I thought she said she was doing it.
Thanks, Owen.
Yep. Thank you, Laurie. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Dwayne. Thanks for your support.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Laurie. Y'all have a good day.
Good.
Dwayne and Marie, thank you all for pulling it off. Thank you.
Hi, y'all.
Twice or those two?
I did it, but let's try to start out. No, let's go back and try the bottom one.
Yeah, click the one without the dot at the end. That was my problem.
All right. What is your most helpful thing?
So the last one is working that I sent, Paulo? Okay, great.
It was the dot.
Okay.
Larry, I got a question real quick. This is Cleveland.
Hey, Cleveland.
Hi. You said, although you don't give out certificates, you said to put the date and your name and what else?
Put Owen's name. So you always put down the day of the webinar, which today is what, June 18th. And the topic was compassion fatigue. And the presenter was Owen Dougherty. You can just put Owen. And just keep a list, you know.
Okay.
Of what which webinars you attend. We also give credit for the town halls that we have. We have recovery town halls every Wednesday from noon to 1. You can earn up to 3 CEU, well, 1 CEU for each one, but we only take up to 3 of those. So you can't do all your CEUs through the town halls.
Okay.
And you can get the ID number from the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse.
Okay.
Facebook page. Okay, one moment. All right, I got another appointment, guys. Anything else?
Yes, Larry, this is Jimmy from Virginia.
Hey, Jimmy.
How could I
get? Walk to the door. Go ahead.
Okay, how could I get that credit for the for this sent to me? I just send you a email.
What do you mean? What do you need?
For the webinar that we just took.
That's what I was just saying. Are you a CARES?
No, I'm not a CARES, but I thought with me taking me doing the webinar, I still got a credit for I still get credit for me to give to the state of Virginia.
Okay, can you just email me or call me and we can talk about it? I'm gonna have to see about that.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
If there's something I can do, okay?
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll try my best. My number is 678-306-7035. Because I understand that you're in another state. So let's just have a quick conversation about it. If you could call me back later on this afternoon, I would be more than happy to talk with my supervisor so we can understand your situation, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank y'all for joining. Have a great day, okay?
All right.
Bye-bye, guys.
All right.